Loading hot takes in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome back into TwinTakes Fantasy Football. I am your host, producer, videographer, audio engineer, editor. Let's just say I wear a lot of hats around here to get this channel up and running. But apart from that boring admin stuff, let's continue our conversation from last episode about sleepers. And I know last episode was a little bit of a downer talking about sleepers that need to go back to bed, guys that I'm not a big fan of. So let's flip that on its head a little bit. Let's talk about sleepers that need to get out of bed. Sleepers that I am very high on at their current ADP that are a little bit farther down the draft board that I think could be instrumental in winning your championship leagues this year in 2022. So that first guy that needs to get out of bed and stop hitting that snooze button is Chase Edmonds. Now, in this current auto draft, he's going in the 8th round, and that's beyond unfathomable to me. And that's because he's the RB1 on his own depth chart down there in Miami. By that fact alone, he should be at least in the RB dead zone of the 4th to 5th round, but he's slipping all the way down to the 8th round, and I'm scooping him up wherever possible because I honestly just have no idea why he's being let slip that far down. But let's talk about why I'm so high on Chase Edmonds, regardless of just the ADP. First off, he goes into a Mike McDaniel offense that really emphasizes the run game and is really, really dynamic. I think it's going to utilize Chase Edmonds' skill sets really well and put him in positions to be successful. We saw last year and many other years in San Francisco that McDaniel is really good at creating these zone spreads and jet sweeps and very creative run schemes. Apart from this, just smashing it power eye up the middle, that would really allow Chase Edmonds to work out and break into the secondary levels after the line of scrimmage and really gain and use his shiftiness to create yards after the first initial contact. Secondly, Chase Edmonds has been pretty productive in the past, and when he was given the number 1 role last year and didn't have anything else in his way without James Conner stepping in, he was a top 24 running back 8 out of those 12 games. So he's been there, he's done that. He's put up a lot of productive games, and that's with only 2 touchdowns on the year. And you know why? Because Chase Edmonds is a cheat code. He is a great pass catching back, and he brought a lot of his fantasy production through not only running the ball, but also creating dump-offs, creating pass-catching situations, and yards after the catch. Now, do I think he's going to get more than 2 touchdowns this year? Absolutely. I am very in on this Dolphins offense. I think it'll be very dynamic, and I think he'll, score way more than just 2 touchdowns. So if he was scoring 15, 20 points without a touchdown, imagine what he can do with those extra 6-point bumps every week. Speaking of how much he can do after the catch and after that first initial contact, Chase Edmonds has an average yards per carry of 5.1, which is top 5 in the league. It's absolutely insane, and that's really, really valued by Mike McDaniel. He actually had a lot of suitors. Chase Edmonds almost went to Buffalo, amongst other places, but he chose to go to the Dolphins, and I think that's because he values Mike McDaniel's offense and how he's going to use them. And Mike McDaniel is not afraid to use a running back on 2nd and long, 3rd and long. He wants to create situations where he keeps the defense on his toes, and for a back that can average 5 yards a carry and can really create distance even on those long yardage downs, I think will be very productive in this Dolphins offense. Again, I mentioned the value in the 8th round before, but listen, he's the number 1 running back on this depth chart. Yeah, I get it. Myles Gaskin's still there, but I'm not really worried about him. Raheem Mostert is a huge injury concern. I don't see him really being a threat to Chase Edmonds' touches. Shoney Michel couldn't even stay on the field last year when Cam Akers got injured, and in a very, very dynamic Rams offense. So I don't think that there's much of a threat to his opportunity in the backfield, and I can't fathom how you're taking a RB1 behind multiple RB2s. He's going behind Tony Pollard, who we talked about last episode. I'd much rather have Chase Edmonds than Tony Pollard just because of the actual guaranteed opportunity Chase Edmonds will have. And probably should talk about this earlier, but just kind of going back to that pass catching ability, he is one of the top pass catching backs in the league. Not as good as Aaron Jones. I know. There's a lot better people, but he is still up there. He had 60 targets with 50 receptions in 2020. He got 40 receptions on 50 targets in 2021, and that's going to be ideal for the offense that McDaniel wants to run. Tua, obviously, he has had questions around his arm strength, so to be able to dump it off, to be able to run those option plays with Tua and Chase Edmonds out of the backfield, I think is going to really benefit not only Edmonds, but the offense as a whole. So yeah, I'm scooping up Chase Edmonds wherever I can get him. But moving on to another running back who's really fallen down the draft board, and how I think is a very big value, is Melvin Gordon. So this comes as a shock given the immense amount of Broncos hate I have been preaching on this channel for the past couple weeks. But listen, the stats back it up. He's in the 9th round, and in 2021, he was a top 20 RB. I believe he was RB 18, Javonte was RB 17, or it was maybe flip-flopped. But, he's a top 20 back. How can you say no to that in the 9th round? And listen, even though I may not be high on the Broncos offense as a whole, but I have to admit, the opportunity is there. Nathaniel Hackett's coming over from the Matt LaFleur offense up in Green Bay. It was one of the most productive offenses in all of football last year. So Hackett does have the offensive ingenuity to create a productive offense there up in the Mile High City. And Russ, for as much as I don't like Russ and I'm kind of fading him a little bit, he is better than Drew Lock and Teddy Bridgewater. So I can't really, be too hateful of that. And even with all the things working against Melvin Gordon last year, he was still a top 20 back. With those two major upgrades with Hackett and Russ, I think that it really mitigates his ability to regress and should still be a pretty premium back coming into the 2022 fantasy season. If you're going in a 0 RB or hero RB kind of draft structure, Melvin Gordon's definitely one of those guys that I'm targeting later down the draft board to pair with, a rookie and Algier and Pierce and maybe one of those dead zone RBs as well. This is also a high-scoring division. I've talked about the arms race that's going on in the AFC West, so it's just going to allow a lot of offensive opportunity in order to keep up with everyone. You have the some top 4 quarterbacks in the AFC in Carr, Mahomes, Herbert, and Russ. Tremendous amount of wide receivers. Tremendously offensive-minded coaches. So yeah, I am seeing a lot of these games. Everyone's trying to get a little piece of that AFC West, those games, because we're anticipating over-unders of 55, 60 points. I believe, I can't remember who was out of the Vegas. Maybe it was MGM, but they're saying on average the over-unders that they're projecting for those games are going to be 55.5 points, which, I will take any piece that's going to be gathering fantasy points and real life points in those games that are super high scoring. Again, as we talked about Chase Edmonds, Melvin Gordon is a receiving threat. Receiving backs are a cheat code for fantasy football. While he's nowhere close to the pure runner that some of these other backs are, like Nick Chubb, who's the easiest comparison, his fantasy value is honestly on par, maybe a little bit less, but on par with someone like Chubb, just because he can, especially in those PPR leagues that are becoming more and more prevalent, he can create those artificial stats with every point every time he catches a ball and runs for 3 yards, rather than having Nick Chubb having to break a few tackles and go for 13 yards. So it is a cheat code, and it really favors those pass catching backs, which Melvin Gordon is. And just, where he is in the 9th round, people are taking so many other opportunities and so many other players that just don't see the field as much as Melvin Gordon. He's going to be on the field for quite a bit. He'll see at least 50% of snaps every game, and I'm taking players in this round who are going to be on the field that much. So we talked about a couple of running backs. Let's move on to a different position, and this one's going to be a wide receiver. He needs to wake up, and this is a true guy that I think could be really fantasy impact in 2022, and that's Allen Lazard. He's currently in this draft going at the end of the 9th round, which is crazy. He's going behind guys like DeAndre Hopkins, who are missing half the season, Hunter Renfrow, who are definitely not going to be the wide receiver one in their offense behind Devontae Adams, but Allen Lazard does have the potential to be the wide receiver one with one of the best QBs in the league. For as much as I don't like Rodgers for what a weirdo he is one of the most talented QBs this league has ever seen. And the potential to be his number one receiving target in the 9th round is absolutely insane. Allen Lazard there is a tremendous value. And the reason why he could be that wide receiver one is he's only one of 4 wide receivers last year that Green Bay retained. MVS left, Equanimeous St. Brown left, and of course Devontae Adams left for Oakland. So out of all those guys that Aaron Rodgers had a rapport with, Allen Lazard is the only one returning, and we do know that Rodgers, being the weirdo that he is, only throws to guys that he trusts, has an issue with guys that he doesn't really have that rapport with. Aaron Jones came out and talked about, how he likes to test rookie receivers and change things up at the line of scrimmage and really confuse them to see how they adapt. And it's not a productive scenario for a rookie wide receiver, someone that doesn't have a rapport with Rodgers. Someone who's been there and done that, like Alan Lazard, definitely is going to garner a lot more targets than he ever should, just based on the mindset that Rodgers brings to the playing field. Listen, let's go back to Gabe Davis. People are talking about how he played down the stretch and projecting him. Why is that same argument not being applied to Alan Lazard? For his final 5 games last year, he was in double digits, and 3 of them were 20-plus point games. That's about as good as production you could hope for a wide receiver, and Gabe Davis is being taken 3-4 rounds ahead of Alan Lazard. So I'm in on Alan Lazard. I'd much rather have him than Gabe Davis. Even straight up, not even comparing the ADP wise. And finally, this is just going to be, I talked about this with Aaron Jones, but this is an easy division. I mean, you're playing against soft defenses like the Lions and the Bears. I don't even think the Minnesota's vaulted defense with Zimmer gone, I don't think it's going to be as good as it used to be. Kevin O'Connell obviously has more of a focus on the offensive side of the football. So listen, especially in division, Packers are going to be putting up a lot of points, and if Alan Lazard is the number 1 wide receiver, he's going to be at least guaranteed, 8 to 10 targets a game, pulling 7 of those. Listen, that's guaranteed double-digit fantasy points, and so a guy that's going in the wide receiver 4 range, that's insane value. Take him round 8, round 7, reach on him. I don't hate that at all. So Alan Lazard is definitely one of those guys that needs to wake up and, be in on. Let's move to a different position, and that's quarterback. Obviously, quarterback is a really game-breaking position for fantasy football. They have the ability to really change the game where they can score anywhere from 4 points if they throw a lot of interceptions and can't complete many passes, but they can also get up to like the 30 to 40 points when they have these 4 TD games and they can run. So people here probably thinking of going Trey Lance. No, his ADP has risen a little bit too high for me to be considering him a sleeper anymore. Don't get me wrong, I love Trey Lance. I love his ADP where it is right now, even though it's risen almost 3 rounds in the past couple weeks. Still in on him, but I want to talk about someone who's a little bit further down the draft board, and that's Tua Tagovailoa. Now, you might think I'm a Dolphins fan by how much I've talked about the Dolphins between Waddle and the wide receivers that'll win you your league and Chase Edmonds earlier this video. I'm not a Dolphins fan. I just love Mike McDaniels, what he brings to the offense, and then the pieces that they have placed around the offense for them to win. Currently, he's being drafted in the 11th round and the 14th QB off the board, which means you can go for a safer option. You can go for an upside guy earlier in the draft, and Tua can be your second QB. He's not going to be a guy that you have to ride or die with. So you're not really sacrificing too much where he is currently drafted, and I think he has the potential to be one of those top 8, top 7 QBs just based on the current offense he's in. So where he is doesn't have to be your main QB, but take a shot on him down the board, and I like taking a shot on him rather than someone like a Matt Ryan or a Trevor Lawrence or a Justin Fields. Justin Fields, even though he might be a better runner, that offensive line is miserable, and the Dolphins brought in Teron Armstead and really bolstered that offensive line to really support Tua. So I think he's the best upside as a QB2. He's not the tremendous rusher that, as a cheat code for fantasy, but he does have scrambling upside. He's a lot more mobile than people give him credit for. He will get out, he will scramble, he will pick up yards with his feet, he will rush for touchdowns, and that obviously supplements his fantasy value, making him not quote unquote a cheat code for fantasy, but definitely giving him more opportunity to score points in that offense. Again, I'm not going to rehash what I did with Chase Edmonds, but I'm super big on what Mike McDaniels can do. I think he elevates a lot of the offenses that he's involved in. I really don't like Jimmy Garoppolo. I don't think he's that great of a QB, but he made Jimmy Garoppolo a Super Bowl quarterbacking team. So really in on the Mike McDaniel bump and what he can do for Tua here. Also, the Dolphins are in on Tua. Like, this is the year for him to succeed and for him to break out. They've equipped him with Tyreek Hill. They brought in so many weapons. They bolstered that offensive line. So they are putting him in a position to succeed, and they really want him to, achieve his best. So they're not saying, hey, go out there, win this on your own. They're really supporting him, and the organizational support behind it really gives me confidence in what Tua can bring to the field this year in real life and fantasy. Finally, he has proven production. Last year, and when in the games that he played over 70% of snaps, he scored 20 plus point games, including a pretty high end, almost 30-point game in which he ran for 2 touchdowns and threw for 2 touchdowns, so a 4 total TD game. So he has it. Has the ability to scramble, to run, to really accrue a lot of points. I wouldn't say the division is super easy, but I don't think it's going to be one of the hardest divisions in football. I think they're going to be able to put up a lot of points, and the fact that he has proven production in the past and he has really garnered a consistent track record of 20-plus point games at QB, that's really all you can ask for. So definitely, as far as QBs to take a shot on really far down the draft board, Tua's my guy. Now, the last sleeper that needs to wake up, I'm going to get a little cheeky with this one. Same thing I did with my landmines video. I'm talking about tight ends here. And this is one of the reasons why I'm a big fan of just punting the tight end position and really reaching for it, streaming it, going down to the waiver wire, using the last few picks and really bolstering the core of your squad. And just because of the amount of depth you can really achieve at the end of the draft is why I'm super high on leaving the tight end position down there. And so I'm going to go over 4 guys really quickly at the end of the draft who you don't have to worry about. You can go 12 rounds, draft whoever you want, and then just take 2 of these guys in the end of the round. And I think you'll be just fine for the fantasy season. First off, a guy who went undrafted in this current draft is Evan Ingram. So there's 0 risk at all. You can take him with the last pick of your draft. So there's 0 risk in drafting him. There's no capital you have to give up. I do think tight ends are like those baby blankets for those young QBs, and I think Evan Ingram will provide that for Trevor Lawrence. This is in past, obviously this is, circumstantial evidence and anecdotal, but I got Mark Andrews' breakout year when Lamar Jackson, came into his own and was a starting QB last year. I was in on Dawson Knox, and he really broke out because he was that, comfort blanket for Josh Allen. So I'm targeting these guys that have maybe younger QBs that don't have established wide receiver weapons that they throw to, tight ends, big bodies, big targets, huge catch radius, and they make throws easier for the quarterback. And I think Trevor Lawrence is going to really rely on Evan Ingram. He is a Pro Bowl tight end and a first-round draft capital. So between that and the fact that they paid him almost $10 million as a tight end, clearly he has the draft capital, he has the track record, and he has, the contract in place to show you that he's going to be utilized pretty fully in this Jaguars offense. And frankly, there's not much competition for targets. I mean, you have Travis Etienne, who I'm super high on. Jay Robinson, still coming back from injury. We don't know what it's going to look like when he fully comes back to the field when he goes 100%. And their best wide receiver is Christian Kirk, who I'm not super high on. I don't think there's a ton of opportunity for targets, and there's not really many wide receivers that scare me outside of taking targets away from Evan Ingram. So that's why I'm super high. Despite some of the drop issues Ingram has had in the past, I think he's going to be a great fantasy asset, especially down the stretch, a major streamer. He'll be picked up pretty frequently to stream, and obviously picking him up at the last pick of your draft will obviously, I think, going to help you out a lot. Another guy, Robert Tonyan, another tight end with 0 draft capital. Prior to last year, I think he was drafted as like the 7th or 8th tight end off the board, but injuries have really derailed his current draft capital. So again, going undrafted, you can pick him up. He did come off the PUP list recently, so he's healthy. He's back practicing. I do want to mention that along with Alan Lazard, he's a guy that has a rapport with Aaron Rodgers. He has the trust of Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers likes him, and being the weirdo that Aaron Rodgers is, will probably give him targets with a ton of those vacated targets from Adams, Equinemius St. Brown, and MVS leaving as well. So definitely a risk or a flyer that I'm willing to take at the end of the round with that. He had huge production a couple years ago. Obviously, he had the nickname Little Kittle. Everyone remembers that 3-touchdown, 30-point game that he had where he just absolutely went off. I think he's going to have a few of those games this year with, obviously increased targets, increased rapport, and then obviously as long as he can stay healthy, he should be, a huge value just based on being driven down with injury last year. So at the end of the draft, Robert Tonyan's the guy I'm targeting. Two more guys, Noah Fant, even though he was traded to that anemic Seattle offense, he does have a rapport with Drew Lock already. Drew Lock did love to target him back when they were both together in the Broncos. There's not too much receiving threat. They're in Seattle. Listen, Tyler Lockett's getting older. DK Metcalf is still DK, but, who else do they have outside of those two wide receivers? There's a lot of, issues around the running back room. Kenneth Walker has a hernia. Rashad Penny, like clockwork, is dealing with a groin issue. Chris Carson retired. DJ Dallas and Travis Homer are names that don't put the fear of God in me at all. I think they're going to be playing from behind a lot, just given the strength of that NFC West division. So I think the opportunity and the targets for Noah Fant will definitely be there. And finally, another guy that you can pick up at the very end of your draft, David Njoku. We just recently found out that Deshaun Watson will be suspended for 11 games, and Njoku is just another one of those guys who's just an athletic powerhouse monster. His physical traits are off the charts. He was a first-round draft capital talent, and we know, just anecdotally, Jacoby Brissett loves throwing his tight ends. He really utilized Mike Gesicki when he was with the Dolphins last year. So coming in as the backup and obviously the stopgap until Deshaun Watson comes back, I genuinely think David Njoku is going to be, putting up top 10 fantasy weeks on a consistent basis. And these all four guys are guys. Listen, if you take three of these guys, I think you are set. You don't have to worry about, navigating kind of the top five guys with Waller, Kittle, Andrews, that sort of stuff. Obviously, if you don't want to deal with projecting the tight end and streaming and all that other stuff, grab Andrews, grab Kelsey early in the second, third round. I totally get that. Obviously, it's what the capacity with which you want to manage your team. But if you really want to bolster your core position skill players in running backs and receivers, and the tight end depth is there for you. These are four guys that I think will be fantasy relevant that are not being drafted, who I would rather take over those middle round guys. Kind of like, I know there's an RB dead zone. I call it a tight end dead zone, which is like 6 to 10 of those guys. I really kind of stay away from those. Hopefully these guys help you achieve that as well. So these are all sleepers that need to wake up. Hopefully you can utilize some of this information, plan some of your draft strategies accordingly, build that core and utilize saying, listen, if I could build a core of, let's say, if I want to go zero RB, if I'm really not in on any of the RBs at the top, which I don't know how you could be, but maybe you like, you're a huge Justin Jefferson, Devontae Adams, Stephon Diggs guy, and you're just like the top end talent for wide receiver, I got to have it. Cool. Punt it. Take Chase Edmonds, take Dameon Pierce, and then take Melvin Gordon, just, rotate those guys. So hopefully this can help you kind of develop your draft strategy a little bit and figure out some guys that really flesh out your team and build a championship winning team.